Hello students, in the last lecture we saw disease distribution. Fine. Now moving ahead, we will understand analytical epidemiology. In that, case control and cohort studies. Fine. Up till now, what we studied in epidemiology, the descriptive studies, like it provides data regarding the magnitude of the disease load and types of disease problems in the community, its morbidity, mortality rates, then some clues to disease etiology, which helps in the formulation of an etiological hypothesis. Fine. What we studied more was if the disease is observed to be more frequent in a particular group than in others, hypothesis was formulated to explain the increased frequency. Then it provided background data for planning, organizing, and evaluating preventive and curative services. They also contribute to research by describing variations in disease occurrence by time, place, and person. Fine, all the points are clear. Now we will go ahead to analytical epidemiology. Now, in contrast to descriptive studies that look at the entire population, in analytical studies, the subject of interest is the individual within the population. Okay. The object is not to formulate but to test hypothesis. Fine. Now there are two distinct types of studies. Case control study and second is the cohort study. Fine. Now let's see case control. They are retrospective. Okay. They clearly define two groups at the start, one with the outcome of the outcome or disease and one without the outcome or disease. Understood? Two groups. They look back to assess whether there is a statistical significant difference in the rates of exposure to a defined risk factor. See this image. You can see two groups showing past and present, proportion of defined exposure, proportion of defined exposure. Fine, this is exposure, one group, and this is outcome or disease. So one will show outcome, one will not show any outcome. Okay, fine. It suggests association between the risk factors and development of disease in question, although no definitive causality can be drawn in this. Fine. Now next, what exactly is done? Now cases should be selected based on objective inclusion and exclusion criteria from a reliable source. Fine. Then next is include two groups identical except for their outcome or disease status. Next, control should also be selected carefully. Fine. It is possible to match controls to the cases selected on the basis of various factors like age, sex, etc. to ensure these do not confound the study results. Fine. It may even increase statistical power and study precision by choosing up to 3 or 4 controls per case. Fine. Now, retrospective study. Now, what are the features? Both exposure and outcome have occurred before the start of the study. Second, the study proceeds backwards from effect to cause. Third, it uses a control or comparison group to support or prove false an inference steps. Okay. Selection of cases and controls, matching, measurement of exposure, analysis and interpretation. Now, how is the process going on? First is selection of case. The prior definition is what constitutes a case is crucial to the case control study. It involves two specifications. One is diagnostic criteria, second is eligibility criteria. Fine. On this basis, the cases are selected. Second is the source of case. Cases can be drawn from hospitals or general population. Now, selection of controls. The controls must be free from disease under study. They must be similar to the cases as possible except for the absence of the disease under study. So, sources of controls are hospitals, relatives, neighborhood, general population, anyone. One control per case if many cases are available, or as many 2, 3 or even 4 if the study group is small. Fine. This much is clear. Now the advantages and disadvantages of case control study. Advantages: relatively easy to carry out. Second, rapid and inexpensive compared to cohort study. We will understand what is cohort study. Third, requires comparatively few subjects. Fourth, no risk to the subject. Fifth, allows the study of several different etiological factors like effect of smoking or physical activity or the change in the diet, etc. Fine. Disadvantages: problems of bias. Second, selection of an appropriate control group may be difficult. Fine. Third, incidence cannot be measured. Only relative risk can be estimated. Fourth, not suited for evaluation of therapy or prophylaxis of disease. Fine. This is just the study to understand the case and its control. Next, cohort study. It is a type of study usually undertaken to obtain additional evidence to support the existence of an association between suspected cause and disease. Now, what are the characteristics? Cohorts are identified prior the appearance of the disease under investigation. The study groups are observed over a period of time to determine the frequency of disease. And third is the study proceeds forward from cause to effect. Okay. Now, selection. Cohort is a group of people who share a common characteristic or experience within a definite time period. For selecting, now what are the facts which are considered? Cohorts must be free from the disease under study. Both the study and control cohorts should be equally susceptible to the disease under study. Next is both the cohort must be comparable in respect to all possible variables which may influence the frequency of the disease. Fine. See, these PPT, it is very theoretical. Fine. I have explained it giving more details. So there will be no much issue for you guys to study. Fine. See, here you can see cohort exposed to etiological agent. Now disease present, disease absent and total. Not exposed to etiological agent, disease present, disease absent and total. So A, B, C, D. Now steps of cohort study. Selection of study subjects, obtaining data on exposure, selection of comparison groups, follow-up and analysis. Fine, this is how the study is done. Let's understand. Selection of study subject. Subjects of a cohort study are usually assembled from general population or a special group. Fine. Now, how is the data obtained on data exposure? Information about exposure is obtained directly from any one or all of the following sources like cohort members, review of records, medical examination, or special test and environmental surveys. Fine. Selection of comparison groups. Now there are many ways. First is internal, external, third is with general population rate. Now what do we see in internal comparison? When a single cohort enters the study, on the basis of information obtained, be classified into several comparison groups according to the degrees of levels of exposure to risk before the development of disease. Okay. Second is external comparison. When the degree of comparison is not available, it is necessary to put up an external to evaluate the experience of that exposed group. Fine. Now, what is included in follow-up? Period medical examination of each member. Next is reviewing physician and hospital records. Third, routine surveillance of death records. Fourth, mailed questionnaires like or through telephone calls and periodic home visits. So follow-up. Now what are the advantages and disadvantages? Advantages. In cohort study, incidence rate can be calculated. Next, several possible outcomes related to exposure can be studied simultaneously. Next, provide a direct estimation of relative risk. And last, dose response ratios can also be calculated. Disadvantages. Involves a large number of people. Second, general unsuitable for investigating uncommon disease or disease with low incidence in the population. Fine. Next, long time to complete study. It takes a very long time. Next, loss of substantial proportion of cohort due to migration or loss of interest. And last is, it is expensive. Fine. I will provide you with the notes as well as the PPT is with full of details. If you have any doubts, please do ask me. Thank you.